From the very beginning, Joseph Smith's family felt they were hearing the same message in different forms. As police told them directly, quote, he made bad choices. That's what led to his fatal shooting on the night of March 5th, 2021, in a parking lot in Upton, Kentucky. He allegedly stole a vehicle. He used drugs. He was homeless. He made bad choices. And maybe to the system, that explained everything.
The American justice system was created to protect both the rights of victims and the rights of the accused. But systems don't always work equally for everyone, especially for people society often stops seeing clearly: the addicted, the homeless, the troubled, the people written off as hopeless long before they ever enter a courtroom.
Maybe Joseph Smith became one of those people, someone the system assumed nobody would really miss, a throwaway. But they were wrong. Joseph Smith mattered to the people who loved him, and one person in particular refused to stop asking questions: his cousin, Keeshia Hendrix. Previously on Kentucky Case Files, we discussed the autopsy of Joseph Smith and the questions it and other evidence raised for the Smith family. Welcome to Kentucky Case Files, the Joseph Smith case, Part 4, Bad Choices. I'm Emily Steele.
And I'm Marcus Rowland. We spoke with Smith's family and friends, including lengthy interviews with Hendrix, about the man they remember, what they were told in the hours after the shooting, and why they want the investigation reopened.
Keeshia, who was Joseph to you?
My relationship to Joseph, his mama passed away when he was 4 months old. It's my mom's twin sister of cancer. Joseph was taken away from us by his dad. He was about 3 years old. He didn't get back into our lives till he was 14 years old. I had kids of my own. Now, him and my kids were very close in age. They hung out. He's family. I see him on holidays until he started getting really bad in drugs and didn't really come to the holidays, which I understand. Yes, he used drugs, but I tell you what, if I asked him to help me, absolutely. Could you do this for me? He absolutely would. He was funny. He was goofy funny. Like, he would do silly stuff, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, Joseph, why? He was a good kid, but just down the wrong path.
What would surprise people to learn about Joseph?
He was an excellent hunter and fisherman. He actually got his welding license 2 years before he passed away. But he was so proud because he wore his uniform to my birthday party. I was like, why would you? He said, that's why I like it. And I was like, okay, Joseph, I'm proud of you.
Joseph's friend Amber Ray echoed those sentiments.
Joe was just really sweet, and he was caring. He would do things like carrying his friend's mom's groceries. He would mow their grass. He was really helpful. Joe did struggle with his mom's death and growing up around other people that had hurt him in their past. So he did struggle with wanting to fit in.
Here's more from Hendrix. Where was he living right before the shooting?
He was couch hopping. He would stay with his friends, or just anywhere he could, anywhere that he could lay his head at night. But on meth, you really don't sleep. So he would probably be up for 3-4 days. And then, wherever he crashed is where he crashed.
Very early on March 6, 2021, a few hours after the shooting, Smith's family would receive the news of his death from Kentucky State Police Trooper Cameron Wright when he visited Smith's aunt, Yvonne LaFollette.
They didn't even really talk to me. The only thing they told me, and that was like at 2:30 in the morning, but they just told me he was shot and killed. And if I had any further questions and blah, 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 here was the number I could call. And I did call several times and never got a response back. They didn't tell me that about the stolen vehicle. They didn't tell me anything. I read that in the paper the next morning.
Hendrix talked to her mother right after receiving the news.
I happened to be on the phone with her when the police got there. They told her that he was deceased, and he just made bad choices. Basically, that was it. They didn't tell her, anything about the vehicle. They didn't give her too much details other than he um, made bad choices and he was deceased.
In the weeks after Smith's death, Hendrix started calling Kentucky State Police, she says, almost obsessively.
I called the police station so many times, and I guess the detective, I don't remember his name, um, they got tired of me calling, so they called him at his house and told him to call me. So he called me from his house off duty, and he was a jerk. He kept saying, "There's no doubt about it that Joseph stole this truck." And I'm like, okay, but that doesn't mean that it's okay for him to get shot and killed.
Kentucky Case Files contacted Kentucky State Police about the investigation. They provided police records but declined to comment on our other inquiries.
The continued lack of communication made things even more questionable for Hendrix.
I had called probably a year after, maybe a little bit longer. I'm not real for sure. Don't pinpoint me to that. But I asked for the police report, and they're like, "Oh, well, we'll get back to you." They never got back to me, and I didn't pursue it because in my mind, I assumed that Joseph had a weapon because I was told that there was a gun in the car. And I assumed, okay, well, maybe it's Joseph's. I doubt it because, honest to God, if he had a gun, he would have sold it for drugs. So I'm like, well, I'll just wait and see. I tried to get it, let's see, about a year after, and then about 2 more years after that, because I've had it for about a year now, a year and a half, something like that. I kept trying to get it, and I called I think it was the Kentucky State Police, and it took him about 30 or 40 minutes to find the case number. He did give me the case number, but when I tried to go get it, I guess he gave me the wrong case number. It wasn't right. And at that point, I was just frustrated, and Joseph's friend got the police report for me. And when I read the police report and it said that Joseph was unarmed and he had put his hands up to show Orion that he had nothing, that's when I don't know, it just struck a nerve, and I refuse to shut up about it.
And she hasn't, to use her words, shut up about it. Hendrix has contacted authorities, written letters, sent emails, made phone calls, and posted to social media calling for the investigation to be reopened. And perhaps in her own version of the infamous "Hell is Real" billboard outside Upton, she has even put up signs around Hardin County with Smith's photo and the statement, "I was murdered."
I've been putting these flyers out and yard signs that I made. I've been putting them all around town, anywhere and everywhere that I could stick one. It says the basic, "I was murdered. My name is Joseph." It tells the date. If you want more information, text me, call me. I'll share the police report with you. Well, when I first started, I reached out to any of the state representatives. I reached out to anybody that I possibly could think of. I emailed people, and then I started making flyers. I started making yard signs. I got a whole bunch of magnets for cars and stuff like that. I've emailed so many people. I've contacted the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. I got an appointment with them. I talked to Chris, which led me really nowhere, but more questions.
Hendrix's posts on social media are pointed, including directly calling out the investigators and the admitted shooter by name.
She has reached out to a wide variety of media, television stations, podcasts besides ours, and print media, resulting in a small story in the Elizabethtown News Enterprise in November 2025.
When the woman from the News Enterprise, she released the story, I was just so happy. I was just so happy that people would I don't know who really reads the newspaper anymore, but if they see it online, people would read this and be like, oh, wow, this is crazy.
Hendrix also wrote to dozens of governmental and law enforcement officials and agencies, including the Kentucky Governor's Office, the State Attorney General's Office, the FBI, and the U.S. Department of Justice, asking for the case to be reopened.
She received a letter acknowledging her request from the DOJ, but otherwise her only significant response was a sit-down with Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney Chris McCrary. Keeshia, what motivates you to take up this fight?
What motivates me is that the injustice in this case. I want to keep it going because Joseph deserves justice. And when I first got the police report, I was just amazed how that somebody could basically shoot somebody and it'd be okay. There's no kind of rule or stand your ground law or anything that justifies you going to find Joseph with your gun in the intent to kill or harm him. Because if you were just looking for the truck, you wouldn't need that gun. He deserves justice.
Why do you persist?
He doesn't have a voice. His mom is gone. His dad's an idiot. And his mom was my mom's twin sister. So I've always felt like, even with his brother, like I stepped in to make sure that, he ate, he had clothes, he did this, almost like I don't want to say taking the mother role, because no, but I wanted to be there for him. I'm not wanting to take her place, but I wanted to make sure that they had some type of bond with my mom and me, like if it was his mom.
Do you think Joseph was basically reduced to the worst moments of his life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that. Yeah, he was couch hopping. He wasn't himself. Like, he was stealing cars. He just wasn't himself. And I truly believe that if he would have got on some depression medicine, that the drugs kind of would have tapered away. But he had to realize that himself. All drug users, they say hit rock bottom before they can bring themselves up. Even though we want to help them, we just keep praying about it. So Joseph was a good person. He just looked for the love of his mother and his father through drugs. A lot of people self-medicate, and that's what he did. He self-medicated so he didn't have to feel the loss of his mom. He wasn't a nobody.
For Hendrix and her family, this case isn't closed. They want it reopened, even if that means the proceedings could be moved to a different county. And as we've explored, some of their reasoning just isn't emotional. They say it's rooted in the evidence. The family concedes that Smith did indeed make bad choices, but they say that's not the sum of his life, and it's no justification for his death.
Here's Hendrix.
Even if he did steal a truck, it's a truck. It wasn't worth his life. Joseph was worth so much more.
Yeah.
He could have had kids. He was 25. I mean, he could have gotten his life together and been somebody, but we'll never know. He was a good kid. I'm sorry. He was a good kid. He was only 25. He didn't have a chance to grow up.
Mark, after going through all these records, what strikes you as the biggest unanswered question here?
The biggest question I have is who could have been with him, with Joseph that night?
One thing that I feel like we might want to acknowledge for those who are just hearing this, and when I think in recent years, when we hear about questions around people being killed and whether or not that is sufficiently investigated, there's often a racial component. There's not a racial angle,
No.
which I think is noteworthy because, I think many cases where we talk about questions of thorough police investigation and drawing conclusions, often what gets publicized, at least in the news, are situations
Right.
there's a clear racial element. But here it seems like we have potentially something more like a class element or
Exactly.
like we talked about, right? People who get pigeonholed based on choices they make, behaviors they exhibit, things like substance abuse, homelessness, that could maybe even just on an unconscious level have some relevance to the way things proceed. Is it in a small town, if not classism, maybe it's like connections. I mean, it's the difference between the person
Right.
who
Yeah.
knows or who has another volunteer emergency responder who they're connected to, right? Is likely to be seen as sort of more credible, more upstanding than the homeless drug user who stole their car, right? Imagine that instead, the one who is embedded in the community and known for being from an upstanding family is the one who is shot, and the one who is disconnected and dismissed in various ways is the shooter. It's hard to imagine that it plays out the same way.
It is hard to imagine.
Most current research on addiction really highlights how often what's the underlying craving is for connection. And that's
Well, and
need.
exactly. And they talk about that. Keeshia talks about how he wanted people to like him. He wanted people to, he was looking for that love, that just basic love you get from your mom or your dad. And he didn't really have that.
Yeah.
That can be a recipe for all kinds of things to cause your life to go the wrong way.
Yeah. This is not, I don't think, as common for me, right? I think about when there are instances of intimate partner violence and sexual assault, there tends to be victim blaming and suspicions and certain dress, certain attitude can make it seem like the person had it coming to them. It's less common in cases of theft, but this seems to be one where there seems to have been a similar logic at work on some level. I mean, if the clean and tidy response to the family is that he essentially brought this on himself by the choices he made, right? It communicates a real clear lack of empathy for this particular victim. I don't know. There's secondhand accounts and rumors that he was actually living with them. There's at least some superficial Facebook connection.
And I think connected to that is the 2 bags of clothes he had with him. How did how did he get them there? How did he get himself there?
Yeah, that's true. They lived outside of town. Like it was some distance.
Oh yeah.
From their house to a main road, a more populated area.
Looking at Google Maps, I think the closest spot for people to do anything was at that IGA,
which was
about 5 miles away.
5 miles away.
So I find that the bags of clothes, that's one of the things that really kind of like has me scratching my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's so tricky because I think there are absolutely situations where a person has to fight for their life. And
oh yeah.
What happens as a result shouldn't be held against them. I think the less immediate, the less close, the less, right? Self-defense, I feared for my life. I mean, I do think that claim deserves a very high level of scrutiny. I think if you've got the other person's DNA under your fingernails, you probably were acting in self-defense. I think
Oh, yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're armed and you have some space between you and the person, there's definitely room to question it. I think the bar is raised in those cases that are less clear-cut, that there is diligent investigation so that that claim of self-defense can be appropriately scrutinized. I don't think it can just be taken for granted. Let's talk about Keeshia, because we gave her a whole thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the story here, Mark, is as much, on one level, it's about the kind of questions that this investigation and its conclusion have left open. But it's also, a story about a family trying to kind of reclaim their lost loved one.
Mhm.
And, I think we see that most clearly in the efforts that Keeshia has put in to keeping her cousin's memory and the issues around this case alive. What of Keeshia and her efforts made the biggest impression on you?
She is drilled into this. She has, I sat with her 3 times, I believe. We talked 3 separate times. She has written everybody, almost any type of state agency or federal agency that would have anything to do with the, from the Justice Department to the Attorney General's office in the state of Kentucky to the governor's office. She has just left no stone unturned. She's not ashamed of anything that she has to say or do. And she's put signs up around there. I believe she's going to plan a vigil or a protest of sorts sometime this summer regarding it. But she has not, as she said, she's not shut up about it, and she's not going to. She says until she gets some type of movement for someone to listen to her.
She has clearly, made incredible efforts, all of a sort of awareness raising, grassroots campaigning flavor. There's that layer of like a perception of criminality. And then you add on addiction, homelessness, the bringing firearms and invoking self-defense into this whole story. Which of those do you think people are least excited in talking about and maybe trying to confront in a meaningful way?
Well, the guns.
Yeah.
I use this terminology. It's this wild, wild west mentality.
Yeah.
You steal my horse, you're going to get shot.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
His wife was on the phone with 911. It's not as if they did not have, in a small town, how long would it have taken the police to find this vehicle? It's not as if they were, you know what I mean? There was this perception that he had to act, he had to get his gun and go immediately.
And all this happened so fast. He was there in 5 minutes, and within seconds, Smith was
and had to open the
dead.
door and had his gun in his hand. And
Yeah.
a lot of that feels very unnecessary. And if we imagine that there were no guns, that there wasn't a gun under the seat in the car, that he didn't have a gun, I don't think this ends the same way. Maybe somebody gets a black eye, but I don't think this ends the same way.
Now, before we continue, it's important to note that Ryan Woodrum has consistently maintained that he acted in self-defense, and after the investigation, no criminal charges were filed against him. The Smith family strongly disagrees with that outcome and believes significant investigative questions remain. Our purpose here isn't to decide guilt or innocence, it's to examine the evidence that exists, the questions that remain unanswered, and why the family believes the investigation should be revisited.
Last question I have for you.
Okay.
Your assessment, thinking back over all of this, is the bigger issue for you whether or not Woodrum was legally justified to do what he did, or whether or not law enforcement really fulfilled their obligations in this case?
the law enforcement side of it and the Commonwealth's Attorney Office that I think stands out to me in this. Their actions or inaction stand out to me in this.
Yeah, both the unanswered questions that possibly more investigation could have shed light on, but also, yeah, the procedural points there. Like I said, you have especially when you have a claim to self-defense, that has to get scrutinized. Like that can't just be taken at face value. Like it may actually be true, but it deserves scrutiny if it's cost someone else their life. Someone in the legal system should evaluate that. It's kind of trite to say, but it's like Joseph didn't get his day in court, that in a very sort of fundamental way.
And when I was doing this and talking to people and reading the reports and things, I don't know if I can express this properly, but I kept feeling like Smith was the defendant. I kept like looking at him as if he was the one who was at fault.
He had to explain his actions. Yeah, his actions had to be explained, because otherwise it was a foregone conclusion that what happened should have happened. Yeah,
that happened.
That is very much how it comes across in the evidence that we see. Yeah, it's a really excellent point.
You know, Emily, one of the things that crept into my mind as we were working on this case, something from author and civil rights activist James Baldwin wrote in a memoir. Let me read this. He says, quote, "If one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one does not question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. One goes to the unprotected, those precisely who need the law's protection most, and listens to their testimony."
I'm not going to shut up until I get justice.
I'm Marcus Rowland.
And I'm Emily Steele.
Join us in 2 weeks when we will venture back in time to Christmas Eve, 1881, and the Ashland tragedy case.
Until then, thanks for listening to Kentucky Case Files. Make sure you like and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sourcing for this podcast includes our original reporting and interviews, Kentucky State Police records, and the State Medical Examiner's autopsy report obtained through the Open Records Act, forensic toxicology research, and news reports from the Elizabethtown News Enterprise, WTVQ, WLKY, WLEX, WBKO, and WDRB.